Imagine a misty dawn in 1612. The air heavy with tension on the isolated Ganryujima Island. A feared swordsman, Sasaki Kojiro, stands ready for a duel, his patience wearing thin as his opponent. Miyamoto Musashi is nowhere to be seen. Little does Kojiro know, this delay is no accident. It's a calculated move, the first strike in a battle of wits before steel even clashes. This moment marks the beginning of one of the most iconic duels in Japanese history, a fight where Musashi, armed only with a wooden sword carved from a boat oar, would prove why he is considered the greatest samurai to ever live. Welcome to the extraordinary story of a man who mastered not just the blade, but the mind. A warrior who won battles before they even began, and whose legacy continues to inspire across centuries. This is the tale of Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's undefeated swordsman. A man who lived through savage civil wars, fought over 60 duels without a single loss, and redefined what it means to be a warrior. His life wasn't just about physical strength. It was about understanding the deeper nature of conflict, a genius who saw combat as a puzzle to solve, not just a fight to win. From a young boy shaped by chaos to a legend whose philosophical writings influence warriors, business leaders, and artists even today, Musashi's journey is one of relentless pursuit, of victory, of mastery, and of truth. Let's dive into the life of a man who carved his name into history with a wooden sword and an unbreakable will. Born in 1584 during the brutal final years of Japan's Sengoku period, Musashi grew up in a world of constant war. In Miyamoto province, his earliest memories were of thundering hooves, clashing steel, and armies moving like dark clouds across the horizon. His father, Monisai, was a respected martial artist skilled with the jiti, a weapon used to catch and break an enemy's sword. But it was his uncle, Dorinbo, a Buddhist monk with the heart of a warrior, who truly shaped young Musashi's path. While other children played, Musashi, at just 7 years old, was learning to read an opponent's slightest movements, to sense the moment before a strike, to understand that combat was as much about the mind as the body. At 13, Musashi faced his first real duel against Arima Kihei, a traveling swordsman who had issued a public challenge in their village. Kihei scoffed at the boy standing before him, until Musashi sent him flying through the air with a perfectly timed strike using just a wooden staff. It wasn't just a victory, it was a humiliation for the grown warrior. Villagers whispered about the fight, not just because of the outcome, but because of the cold, piercing focus in the young boy's eyes, a gaze that seemed to see straight through to the moment of triumph. But in 1597, Japan was no place for a young prodigy to rest. The warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi was dying, and with him, the fragile peace he had forced upon the feuding clans. As armies stirred and alliances shifted, the stage was set for the massive Battle of Sekigahara. For a 13-year-old who had already tasted blood, this chaos wasn't danger, it was opportunity. In the forests near his home, other children began to avoid the strange boy who practiced sword strokes until his hands bled, who meditated under freezing waterfalls, who spoke little but watched everything with unsettling intensity. They didn't understand what Musashi already knew. He wasn't just training to fight, he was forging himself into a living weapon. Every swing, every breath, every moment was a step toward a destiny even he couldn't fully see. What made Musashi different, even at this young age, wasn't just his skill with a sword, though that was impressive, but his ability to see combat as a problem to solve, not a ritual to follow. While other young samurai memorized rigid stances, Musashi was building a philosophy that true victory starts in the mind, long before blades ever meet. At 16, Musashi left behind everything he knew, carrying only his swords and a burning desire to find the secret of perfect victory. The Japan he stepped into was a land of change. The Tokugawa shogunate had just taken power, and in the uneasy peace that followed, warriors across the country found themselves with swords, but no wars to fight. In this environment, dueling became an art form, a way for samurai to prove themselves. Musashi's first major test came at the Kennenji Temple in Kyoto, where he faced a master of the chain and sickle, a weapon thought to be unstoppable with its whirling chain and deadly curved blade. But Musashi saw beyond the weapon to the man wielding it. By reading his opponent's shoulders and hips, the tiny shifts in weight, he dodged the chain and struck with deadly speed. Witnesses couldn't agree on what they saw, but the result was clear. The chain master was dead, defeated by a young man who had unraveled his entire style in just a few moves. But it was his battles with the Yoshioka school in Kyoto that truly made Musashi a legend. The Yoshioka were the city's most prestigious sword school, their techniques honed over generations. They laughed at the young outsider, until Musashi defeated their master, Seijuro, with a single strike to the shoulder. When Seijuro's brother, Denshichiro, demanded a rematch, Musashi killed him with a wooden sword. Humiliated, the school planned an ambush at Ichijoji, hiding warriors among the cherry trees to overwhelm him with numbers. But Musashi outsmarted them. Instead of arriving at the agreed time, he came at dawn. Instead of walking into their trap, he attacked first, cutting through their ranks like a storm, leaving behind a brutal lesson. True strategy means controlling the battle, never accepting the terms set by others. Between duels, Musashi created something revolutionary: the two-sword style. Wielding a sword in each hand wasn't just for show. It changed the geometry of combat, turning defense into attack, creating angles that baffled opponents. Many called it a trick until they faced it and found no answer to the dual blades moving like water and striking like lightning. Stories spread across Japan of the young master, who fought with wooden swords against steel, who arrived late to duels to throw off his opponents, who seemed to win before the fight even started. But the truth was deeper. Musashi wasn't just winning. He was breaking down combat to its core, stripping away tradition to reveal the raw physics of victory. Each duel was an experiment. Each technique he faced a new piece in his growing understanding of universal combat principles. By 21, he had fought over 60 duels without a defeat, each victory a step in testing his evolving theory of battle. In feudal Japan, reputation was everything, and Musashi's name became a currency of fear. Dojos closed their doors when they heard he was near, not out of cowardice, but from the realization that facing him meant choosing between shame and death. Yet Musashi wasn't just a destroyer. He was chasing something greater, the hidden structure of conflict itself. He stopped announcing his arrival in new territories, a bold break from samurai etiquette. Instead, he'd appear in tea houses or markets, dressed in ragged clothes, unwashed, carrying a rough wooden sword. This was no accident. It was a tactic. It drew out brash challengers eager to make a name by defeating an easy target, and it let Musashi study them unnoticed. By the time a duel began, he already knew their weaknesses: the proud ones who overreached, the cautious ones who hesitated, the skilled ones whose perfection made them predictable. His methods grew more psychological over time. In Nagoya, he defeated a spearmaster without drawing a blade, waiting until fatigue shifted the man's grip before stepping inside his reach and breaking his fingers. In Edo, he faced 3 brothers at once but arrived 4 hours late, knowing their nervous waiting would tire them more than any fight. He found them already beaten by their own minds, their planned attack falling apart into chaos. But his duel with the chain master Shishido showed the true depth of his strategy. Shishido's technique created an impenetrable sphere of steel with a weighted chain, a defense that had killed 43 challengers. Musashi watched him for 3 days, then arrived with an oversized sword, its length calculated to just exceed the chain's reach. This precision, only understood years later by martial arts scholars, showed how he turned combat into mathematics. As his fame grew, so did the efforts to defeat him. A school in Fukuoka created a curriculum just to counter his techniques, studying every report of his fights and training against his two-sword style. When their master faced Musashi, he lasted less than 6 moves, because Musashi, expecting their preparation, had invented new techniques just for that duel. What set him apart wasn't just winning, it was understanding why he won. After each fight, he'd meditate for hours, breaking down every moment, finding principles that went beyond specific moves. He saw connections everywhere, how a swordsman's footwork mirrored a merchant's haggling, how the rhythm of waves on a shore taught timing in battle. The more famous he became, the simpler his duels looked, not because they were easy, but because the real fight, psychological, strategic, happened long before steel was drawn. Musashi's genius wasn't limited to the sword, it extended into art, where he approached painting and sculpture with the same intensity as combat. His early works weren't about beauty, but about understanding the essence of things. He'd study a blade of grass for hours, not to draw it perfectly, but to grasp its form and function. During 40 days of isolation in the mountains of Kumamoto, he painted birds, not the delicate ones of traditional art, but birds in raw motion. A hawk, striking, a sparrow, turning mid-flight. Artists found his work unsettling, not for violence, but for capturing the geometry of life. Where others took days for a single brushstroke, Musashi finished pieces in minutes, sometimes seconds. His famous strike on a dead branch was done in one breath, not for speed, but to seize the bird's alertness in an instant. Critics called it rough, until they couldn't look away, feeling the bird might leap from the page. His sculptures broke every rule. Instead of planning a design, he'd find wood or stone with a hidden shape and reveal it, attacking the material with the same focus as a duel, his chisel striking like a sword. In calligraphy, his bold, striking characters balanced force and control, influencing Japanese art for centuries. His landscapes were like battlefields, each element placed with purpose, guiding the viewer's eye like armies on terrain. His view from above the clouds, painted after 3 days meditating on a mountaintop, ignored perspective rules, yet captured height and distance like no other. Japan's elite commissioned his works, expecting elegant scenes, but got paintings that moved, sculptures defying gravity, and gardens designed with martial principles that made warriors instinctively take combat stances. For Musashi, art and combat weren't separate. They were expressions of the same truths about space, timing, and intent. In his final years, at 60, racked by pain and possibly stomach cancer, Musashi retreated to the Rigando cave near Mount Iwado to write the Book of 5 Rings, a text that would become the most influential martial arts work ever. In this volcanic cave, with light and shadow shifting like his fluid ideas, he poured out a lifetime of lessons with raw urgency. Written in direct, practical language, not the poetic style of his time, each word was tested by real blood, his own or others. Structured around 5 elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and void. It wasn't metaphor but a framework for reality, from swordplay to strategy in any field. Earth was the foundation of strategy, water the ability to adapt, fire the power of timing, wind the reading of patterns, and void the state of pure action without thought. Unlike other masters who hid their secrets, Musashi insisted these principles were everywhere, in a carpenter's work, a farmer's weather sense, even in placing a nail. As his health faded, his writing burned brighter. The Fire chapter, written in one fevered night, captured timing with a clarity only a dying man could see. The Void chapter, his brush moving faster than his attendant could prepare ink, described a state beyond technique, where warrior and weapon became one. His final pages, written as autumn leaves fell outside, went beyond strategy, revealing that true victory meant letting go of the idea of winning. The Book of Five Rings wasn't just a sword manual. It was a guide to conflict at every level, influencing not just warriors but leaders and thinkers across time. Musashi's mastery of combat psychology set him apart from all others. While samurai perfected their bodies, he saw the mind as the true battlefield. Court records from 1612 note him watching merchants haggle in Nagasaki's fish market for 3 days, studying their tactics with the same focus as swordplay. He believed all conflict followed the same patterns if you looked deeply enough. His odd habits, showing up to duels in tattered clothes, unwashed, but with a flawless sword, were psychological weapons, creating doubt in opponents before a fight began. He studied fear itself, learning its signs: a raised shoulder, a tiny hesitation, a change in breath. With what he called eyes of emptiness, he read these like a book written on his opponent's body. In later years, his psychological tactics peaked. During talks for a duel with the Hosokawa clan's master, Musashi sent a detailed breakdown of the man's weaknesses, flaws even the master hadn't seen. The duel never happened. The mental victory was already won. He also mastered strategic vulnerability, exposing chosen weaknesses to bait opponents into fatal mistakes, playing chess while they played checkers. Against groups, he'd target the spirit leader, the one whose presence held their courage together, breaking the whole unit by defeating one. This insight later shaped military and corporate strategies. In his final teachings, he spoke of the sword of no sword, winning without fighting through pure psychological dominance. His students felt exhausted just being near him, as if his attention was a battle. True mastery, he concluded, was transcending technique until mind and action became one. On his deathbed in 1645, Musashi gave his trusted student a sealed letter with 3 characters: understand nothing. Whether a profound truth or a final jest, it captured the man who reshaped Japan's martial world. His influence spread far beyond his time. By 1650, Dutch East India Company traders in Nagasaki found Japanese negotiators using the Book of Five Rings in business, and copies sold for their weight in silver in Amsterdam, despite the language barrier. Military leaders across Asia studied his battlefield geometry. Chinese General Sun credited Musashi's text for a stunning victory in 1683. During Japan's Meiji Revolution, his ideas on function over form inspired cultural reform in modern corporate structures. Artists like Hokusai drew from his single-stroke mastery, while 20th century leaders, from WWF strategists to Steve Jobs, cited his principles. Even modern neuroscience confirms his insights on flow states and automated skills. Yet Musashi's greatest legacy isn't a specific technique, but his belief that mastery in one area lights the way to all others. From AI to game theory, his teachings resonate today. Recent discoveries at Redondo Cave show a man far from the effortless genius of myth. Hundreds of revised writings reveal obsessive work. Traces of medicinal herbs at campsites hint at chronic pain during duels, and letters to a blind monk in Kyoto expose moral struggles over his early kills. Forensic analysis of his paintings shows tremors, possibly from trauma, turned into dynamic art. Financial records reveal he secretly gave money, around $10,000 in today's terms, to families of defeated opponents, hiding his compassion to protect their pride. Musashi wasn't perfect. He was human, turning flaws into strength. His final message, understand nothing, might mean that true mastery starts by letting go of what we think we know, transforming our struggles into tools for greatness. His life, spanning countless battles over distances like 500 kilometers across Japan, wielding swords weighing around 1.2 kilograms, shows that the path of the sword, followed far enough, leads to an understanding of excellence itself.